Steve Wynn has released well over 30 albums during the last 25 years with his bands The Dream Syndicate, Danny and Dusty, Gutterball, The Miracle 3, The Baseball Project, and more, with quite a few solo records in the mix. He's played over 2,000 shows in more than 25 countries, and his songs have been recorded and/or performed by R.E.M., Luna, Concrete Blonde, The Black Crowes, Yola Tango, and 11th Dream Day, among others. Steve has been featured in Rolling Stone, Mojo, Uncut, Entertainment Weekly, People, the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, and many publications worldwide. His new book, I Wouldn't Say It If It Wasn't True, a memoir of life, music, and the Dream Syndicate, covers a lot of Steve's life. From his childhood in California to forming bands and opening for bands like R.E.M. and U2 to recent times, playing solo and also with his band The Baseball Project. It was a great experience to talk with the very prolific Steve Wynn. You're listening to Frets with DJ Fey. No lessons, no technique info. I just talk to people who play guitar. Stay tuned. Well, Steve Wynn, thanks so much for doing this. Are you calling from home?
I am calling from home. I'm off the road which is a rare thing. Yeah. Good to talk to you.
Nice break.
Yeah, a little 3-month break between tours.
You were born in one of my favorite cities, Santa Monica. Is that right?
I was born in Santa Monica. That's very true.
Actually, my very first trip, my first of many trips to California was when my brother was living there for quite a while. He's still in the LA area, but he lived in Santa Monica for quite a while.
What part of Santa Monica was it? Was it near right near the beach?
He was pretty near, I think 9th Street. It wasn't too far from like 3rd Street Promenade and even the pier and all that stuff. So for a while.
Close to a very good guitar shop, Two-Tone Guitars.
I haven't been there. I've been to McCabe's a bunch, but I've never been to that guitar shop.
Oh, McCabe's. We could talk about McCabe's for the entire hour. I mean, there's plenty to say about that.
I love McCabe's. Well, speaking of guitars, you picked up a guitar when you were pretty young.
Yeah, very young. In fact, in my book, my memoir that just came out, there's a picture of me holding a guitar when I'm, like about 2 years old, maybe not even that old. So I wasn't playing it then, but I already was obviously enamored by them. And there's another picture of me about 8 holding a guitar. My left hand doesn't seem to be doing much of anything on the frets, but I've got the form by then. And that's about when I started really playing. So, I was a music fan, really a complete deep diving music fan from the age of about 5 years old. And that just never went away. And for some reason, I'm lucky enough where that translated to the idea that, and since I love music so much, I want to play guitar. And my mother I was raised by a single mother, and she was very encouraging. Got me my first acoustic, and I started taking lessons around 8 and just never looked back. I've been playing now, when I say that to you, I'm playing for 55 years, and I wish I could say I play like a guy who's played for 55 years, but I can get around pretty well.
Yeah, my first experience, the family had a ukulele, and I would plunk around on that. But it didn't take long where I was, I wanted a guitar and I wanted to learn it, so I started pretty young too. But
how old were you when you started?
I'd say I took some lessons, like Saturday lessons, when I was maybe like 12 or 13 or something like that. And then little by little just got to where I was pretty good at listening to a record and figuring out what they're playing. When I got to that point, I just kind of was playing mostly by ear. And then I would not call myself a great player by any means, but I love playing, and I've been playing all my life. So,
well, being able to play by ear at a young age, that's really impressive. That was a big part of learning, for me too. I would, my favorite records. I wish I still had a lot of them, but I can visualize my earliest, whether David Bowie records or Kinks records or or Beatles records, where I would write in pencil on the lyric sheet or on the inner sleeve the chords. I would sit and say, what is that? And it was a place down. Back then sheet music was more, ubiquitous. It was more thing you'd see around. You don't see it so much these days, but there was a great sheet music shop in Westwood Village, not far from Santa Monica, where I used to go. It was a Carl Fisher shop, just like, the famous publisher. They had a shop there in Westwood Village. And that was a magic place for me. I'd walk in there and I'd see all the, the single song sheet music or the full bands, or like, the coveted Beatles complete book or things like that. And I would just look at those, and that was a gateway. That was, that was always the thing for me, is just learning the chords so I could sing along with the songs. I was a little less, I for better or for worse, I was never the kid who tried to learn every solo on every record. I didn't try to learn how to play Stairway to Heaven, or how to play, Led Zeppelin solo. I had a guitar teacher who tried to teach me how to play Hideaway by John Mayall's Blues Breakers, and it was a painstaking 2 months where I never quite got it down. I was slower than slow hand, and just that didn't, for whatever reason, the idea of learning to play a solo off a record until later wasn't that appealing to me. But what I did love was, I guess this is because I was a songwriter, and that's where I was headed, was that I would wanted to see how chords fit together, and how a song that I loved, I would have in my collection, how that came together. Why did, Lola by the Kinks, why did that sound the way it did? Why did it make me feel the way it did? Well, he put the C, D, and E right there and put them in a row in that way, and that's what I love about it. And then I said, okay, got it. Now I'll do some of that.
Yeah, I always say that's a powerful opening. It commands your attention, those opening chords to Lola.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it is C, D, and E, by the way.
Well, yeah, but it's
sounds about right.
Kinks are a favorite of mine. But yeah, I've started as a rhythm guitar player and pretty much have remained. Over the years, occasionally sort of figured out a solo or two, but I have to work at it. I'm not really good at improvising solos, so. Well, I also read that you were pretty young when you wrote a song. Was it called "Sing My Blues"?
Yeah, in fact, I've been playing it in my current show because I'm touring right now. Started last September, going till next June, all across the U.S. and Europe, doing a show that ties into my book. So I've been playing "Sing My Blues" every night to illustrate just how songwriting develops as part of the theme of the show. And it cracks me up because I don't think, when I was 9 and, then writing that song, I'd be thinking, yeah, someday I'll taking this song all around the world and stage from town to town. But there it is, "Sing My Blues" in part of my show every night. Yeah, that was the first one.
That's so cool.
Funny first song too. It's got bar chords. I was 9 years old, and it's got, an F in the full bar position, and and which was not easy then, a little bit easier now. And and these very heavy lyrics about, no one's going to be around, someday to feel this feeling I'm feeling. So sing my blues. Oh my God, lighten up, kid.
What was it?
But many more followed. And I wrote a lot of songs, from the age of 9 to 14. I was kind of cranking them out, and I remember some of them now. I didn't, obviously didn't record them and didn't even write them down, but some of them stick in my head. They were actually surprisingly ambitious songs. I would, over time, simplify to the point now where, I write songs that have one chord and feel pretty good about, doing that. But back then, they had, as was the popular thing of the day. If you think about songs like, all those Who songs, the Pete Townsend songs, and Band on the Run or whatever, every song had 3 songs in one. Every song, no matter how short, was a little mini suite, the Bohemian Rhapsody thing. And I wrote a few of those at the time, that 13, this is, it's going to all wrap around 5 minutes and come back to the opening theme. Oh my God, I was doing all that kind of thing.
Well, that was early teens, but by junior high, you were already forming or joining bands, I think.
Yeah, I band. Let's say band. I mean, I fooled around with one little band when I was 9, but I had a band when I was 13. We called ourselves Purple Passion. It was named for a soft drink at the time, and they had a song on the radio. Their commercial. I can still sing it today. A purple passion is good to drink. It was a silly little song, but that was a good name for a band too, I thought, but then we, for whatever reason, changed our name to Sudden Death, and then Sudden Death Overtime. And then that band played all of 2 shows, both at my junior high school, Emerson Junior High School in West LA. We played a show on the schoolyard, and then one at a big assembly for 400 people packed into an auditorium, all going crazy. That was a little taste of something at an early age.
Yeah.
And one thing I wish, and of course it would be different today. A kid, now if a 13-year-old today was doing that, that his parents or his friends would be filming it from every angle, putting it on YouTube, and he'd be able to look at
Right.
it when he's my age and say, or however one will view themselves in 40 years, 50 years, but he'll be documented. Of course, nothing was documented back then. So
Right.
in my mind, we were a damn good band. In my mind, we were killing it. We were, we were playing those songs like we should have been playing at the LA Forum. But who knows? We must have been good enough to get from start to finish and play a song like Pinball Wizard, which not easy. So it's fun to think of that like little squirt me was out there playing in a band, doing all this stuff.
Yeah, I was going to ask, was it a mix of cover songs and maybe some original songs, or mostly covers?
No originals, even though I'd been writing. I don't know why we decided not to do that. Who knows? There could have been a lot of reasons. And I was the rhythm guitarist in that band. I was just kind of strung along. So I wasn't doing my songs, but we did I know we did like Jumpin' Jack Flash was our big number. and Pinball Wizard, like I said, and a few other things like that. A lot of what would be called classic rock, except it wasn't classic rock then, it was just rock.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, I want to talk about Plug. Plug makes it easy for you to purchase the personal technology you need at 40 to 70% off retail pricing. What can you get from Plug? Certified pre-owned devices including iPhones, Androids, AirPods, Macs, smartwatches, accessories, and more. I originally didn't even want an Apple Watch, but I got one from Plug and I love it. I wear it every day. Your purchase is backed by their unmatched 1-year warranty and 30-day money-back guarantee. One more very cool thing, Plug is dedicated to helping reduce e-waste around the globe. To date, Plug has helped save over 1 million devices from reaching landfills, and they're looking to double that number by 2025. Link to Plug Tech from the show notes, and check out all the great deals and savings on certified pre-owned devices. Plug Electronics. Check it out. Well, I want to get into some of the bands you were in once you started recording a few years down the road and touring and all that. I know there were a lot of bands, but first I'm curious about some other things you were doing maybe around that time or maybe around or after high school. I have a lot of friends who work in record stores, mainly like Euclid Records here in St. Louis. Steve Scariano was on the show in his early days. And of course, Steve not only has a lot of experience working in record stores, but he's played in many bands over the years.
Steve's a great guy.
He is a great guy. You and Peter Buck, Linda Pittman, Scott McCoy, you guys all worked in record stores and were around music a lot. I gotta assume that a lot of that music kind of went into your internal blender and came out at some point in your music.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think about that, and it's like not only in the baseball project where 4 of the 5 members you just named worked in record stores, also in the Dream Syndicate, myself and Dennis Duck and Jason Victor, 3 of the 4 members, we all worked in record stores. I mean, it's not a coincidence. That's if you're if you love music, your focus is on playing music, and you're just either too lazy or unqualified to get a normal job and want to be around music all the time. I know I'll go work in a record store for minimum wage, but get to listen to records all day and spend half my salary on buying records. But yeah, sounds like a good deal. And that's what we all did. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think that, I say this often, but I think most musicians, most people whose music we love, we're all music fanatics. You can feel like, the Beatles came along and invented the world. Well, they did, but they knew more about music than probably anybody else around at the time. Yes. They were absorbing everything. They were absorbing everything from the Everly Brothers and Chuck Berry and Little Richard to show tunes and music hall and vaudeville tunes. And the same goes for Bob Dylan, who could, I think to this day, probably play 5,000 old folk songs. I mean, his retention and knowledge of music history is incredible. The Stones, named themselves after a Muddy Waters song and then became friends because Mick and Keith were at his train station noticing the records that Mick was carrying under his arm. Right. Anything you look at, there might have been an era. And there probably are certain times where people get into music because if I play well enough, I'll get a lot of girls and be a star and ride in limousines. I think that maybe was more of a thing maybe in the 70s or maybe in the hair metal days of the 80s. I can't say for sure if they had the same attitude. But generally, I'll speak for what I know from my scene, for the scene I came up in, which is, the early 80s, Dream Syndicate, R.E.M, DBs, Soft Boys, I mean, just go down the list, Bangles, all these bands were all music junkies whose main motivation for being in a band was I love music so much that I want to do it too. I want to somehow be able to create and impart that same thrill that I get when I hear a record for other people. Wouldn't that be something? And so it's not a surprise. And when I think of the people I play music with, that is the primary thing. Is like, oh man, I am going to blow your mind the same way my mind was blown, and that's all you can hope to do.
Yeah, all the musicians I know personally they feel that way, and it's a real passion for music and a lot of different genres of music. You also worked as a DJ at KDVS, I think. Was that near Sacramento?
Yeah, Davis, which is about 10 miles from Sacramento. It's a mostly college town, and that's where I went for 3 years from age 17 to 20, ostensibly to, I guess, get a college education. But the education I got there was, I'm majored in punk rock and minored in new wave. That was and it was a damn good education from playing in my first real performing club bands and being a DJ and dabbling in being a rock critic, things like that, and just working in record stores, all those things I did. That was, man, is the education I didn't expect to get. But when you say college education should give you a lifetime of employment, it did. It did. That was my schooling.
That's something I always wanted to do and never did, was work as a DJ. But someday.
Oh, it's so much fun. It's first of all, it's so much fun. It's something I dreamed. I remember being in much younger, been junior high school. In high school, I would dream about getting a ham radio, because I thought, well, I get a ham radio. That was the thing. You get a ham radio. I can broadcast radio programs. I really would think about that. And you had to, back then, to DJ, you had to get a license, and even to be a college radio DJ back then, you had to get an FCC license, which wasn't easy. It involved learning a lot of stuff, and it was a barrier. Now, of course, it's a lot easier. You can do a podcast, do all kinds of things. And the thing I used to love DJing, and I miss it very much. And so whenever I get a chance to do it, I will. And there's a program. There are many programs on, you can get for your iPad or for apps. You can get DJ programs that look like two little turntables, and you can use your own library and stuff like that. I have that loaded up at all times. So when I'm on tour, if I'm at a cool club, I just play at a club, or if I'm hanging out, I'm the guy who will say, "Hey, if you want, I'll DJ." And I've done that. I've done that after playing 2-hour shows. I'll come off stage, dry myself off, and get behind the board and DJ for another 2 hours. And I love it. It's the best. So yeah, it's a funny thing. I get to live the life of a professional musician, which is everyone's dream, but secretly I just want to be a DJ.
That's cool. Well, your band, The Suspects, released a single, Talking Loud, and the band remained active, I guess, through 1981, I guess. Was that your first time in a recording studio?
Mm-hmm. And we were actually, I'd say 78 to 80, primarily 78 and 79. The first time for a lot of things. That was the band. I formed that band at college at Davis. And, I talked about, something about Purple Passion, Sudden Death Over Time, that kind of thing. But that was just, a band that rehearsed in a living room and kind of ended up playing a couple shows, which was no small deal. But Suspects was the band where, actually we would get in the van and go to San Francisco and play in a club, and play shows in Sacramento, And yes, we went in the recording studio, all those things that, that I'd never done. Wouldn't it, it was just such a learning curve, and back then, as opposed to now, things were a little tougher in some ways, because there wasn't the independent music scene that there is today, where, a band today, or a musician, not even a band, one guy is, a guy like McGee, who I like quite a bit, he can create a whole universe himself in his home studio. And a home studio can be on your phone, and you can record something wonderful, groundbreaking, and then have it, released the same evening. What an amazing thing. So, back then, to do our first record, we looked around Sacramento for recording studios, because that's what you had to do. You couldn't just record any other way. You had to go into a studio. And there was one studio in Sacramento that kind of fit the bill. And I remember going there, and it was primarily a jingle studio. It was like, I think bands would pass through there, but they would record things for commercials, I guess. And I remember the price they quoted us was $1,000 a day. Now, this is 1979, I think. A studio today, all these years later, you can get a great studio for half that price. So it's kind of funny how, what I'm trying to say is how difficult how high a bar it was set to be able to record a record. We ended up instead finding a studio in San Francisco run by a guy who had been not in Blue Cheer. I think he'd been in a later lineup of Blue Cheer, and he had a little home studio, but a nice one, and we recorded for much less and with a guy who understood rock and roll bands. So that was much better. But it was not easy. It wasn't easy to make a record, to release a record, to get your music out there. It wasn't that easy even to go out and get shows or do a tour. There just wasn't as much of a circuit. So that made it more difficult for bands, but also in some ways more exciting. And I think that the scene that came out in the early 80s, the whole, like the bands I was mentioning before, all the bands you think of from that era, we kind of, and I say this with no false modesty, we kind of invented that independent touring band thing. It wasn't, I'm not saying nobody did it, but it was such a rare thing back before the 80s. The idea was bands would somehow try to get noticed enough to get on a proper label, a major label, and then have somebody bankroll your tour. Yeah. And you think about it, bands like the Stooges, MC5, the Sex Pistols, the Buzzcocks, Clash. These bands were all major label big bands with, machines behind them. You think, well, the Stooges and MC5 must have been some little, underground. No. They were on Elektra with them. I don't know who their agent was. So I guess this was the first time where you said, screw it. We may not be big or successful or on the way to the toppermost of the poppermost, but we will be able to go out and play music, and we'll figure it out. And it became a thing that I still do and people do regularly now.
That's great.
Hey, this is Steve Wynn of the Dream Syndicate and the Baseball Project, and any other band that happens to come along in the meantime. You're here listening to Frets with DJ Fey. Check it out.
Well, in the very early 80s, you formed the Dream Syndicate. Can you talk a bit about how that all came together?
Well, in the early 80s, after I'd been in Dave's, I went back to Los Angeles in 1980, and I still wanted to play in bands. And, there was a paper in LA called The Recycler. I'm sure various cities had versions of that, but the Recycler was how so many bands got formed. Probably a lot of bands when I think about it. And it was just an advertising rag for sell your car or sell your stereo or, meet bandmates. And so I would go on there and, get together with musicians and try to say, well, I'm into this or see who's into what, and it was terrible. I played in a few different bands and I did on the level of music, personality, fun, anything. It just wasn't happening. And I kind of got the point where, I'm through. I'm old now. I'm going to be 21. Holy cow. It's like, a little too old to mess around with this kind of stuff. So I'm going to make one last single. I'm going to make one single where I play everything in my home studio, which I had by that point, a little real tape machine. I'm going to do a single and then that's it. That's my goodbye. And I did that. But right about that time I did that, I met a guitarist named Carl Pacoda, who ended up being the guitarist in the Dream Syndicate. And somehow the two of us just hit it off in a way that just was everything I was looking for. The way we played together, it was just fun. It was just jamming, but a jamming with kind of bringing in all the elements of music I loved. It was hypnotic and at the same time abrasive and weird. And pop at the same time, and we just knew what each other were looking for somehow. And we brought in Kendra Smith, who was the singer of Suspects back in Davis, who had moved to LA as well. And she said, "I love what you guys are doing. I want in on that." Well, all right. Kendra played bass, and we just, it was really a case of it was the right exactly way you want to be playing music. We weren't sort of thinking, you know what, this is going to be big, or you know what, people are going to love this. We just thought, this is really good. I want more of this. This is what I've been wanting to hear. And we were lucky enough to meet Dennis Duck, who at the time had been drumming in Human Hands, which might mean very little people now, but they were a pretty big deal in LA at the time. They were able to headline the Whiskey A Go-Go. And Dennis had just stopped. I think at that point, Human Hands had broken up, I'm pretty sure at that point. And he came by and for just because he knew Kendra, and Kendra talked him into coming over and playing with us. And he did. And he loved what we were doing. And it's the chemistry we had at that time, the four of us together, was just perfect. It was just right. It was just sort of four people who knew how to play together and do something that was exciting. And, it was effortless and fun. And as should be the case, we liked it so much, and we thought it was so cool. We were our own favorite band, not in a bragging way or in a delusional way, but no, if this wasn't us, we'd be first in line to see this band at any club. Well, if you like your own music that much, that much, odds are somebody else will too.
Sure.
If you are your own favorite band, you're bound to be somebody else's favorite band too. Maybe not 10 million people's favorite band, but maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe 10,000. And that was the case with us. It was shocking at the time, but also not surprising how popular we got so fast. I say this all the time, but we paid no dues. We just went from our first rehearsal to making a record and playing a sold out show in Hollywood within 3 weeks. And that was it. Straight up, boom. It was crazy. But again, we had something. We did something, and people recognized it just like we did.
That's so great. You mentioned the reel-to-reel. I still have in the corner of this room a little Akai reel-to-reel that was my dad's when I still lived at home. And that was my first experience. Wow. Well, I would sit there and, record me strumming some chords and singing. And then I would, so 2 tracks, I was experimenting with like adding harmonies and stuff like that. And still have a few of those ancient recordings that I ultimately digitized them. I don't know, maybe.
Oh, you did? Good.
Maybe 10 years ago, because I know that tape, was just going to erode at some point. But
oh yeah,
it was fun to fool.
Fun though, right?
Very fun to fool around with the 2-track.
Yeah, the first time you could, comparing. I mean, I've had a lifetime of being very into whatever home recording thing was happening at the time. Mm-hmm. I had the 4-track TX 3340 before Dream Syndicate, and then when the 4-track cassettes, the Fostex X15 came along, I was down on that, and and I got that, and I was using that all the time, and then before it was ADATs. Well, let me in on that. I love that. And it's going to the point now where, like I said earlier, now I just cruise around New York City with my iPad and record things on iPad on GarageBand while I'm sitting in a coffee shop.
It's crazy.
I got it's crazy. I got approached. This is actually not that maybe 10 years ago, something like that, by an Italian record company who was doing a tribute to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and they wanted me to do a track. And I did the song Triad, a David Crosby song from the last Birds record he made with them. And I recorded the whole thing on GarageBand using various loops and the onboard instruments on my iPad, and sitting in a bagel shop on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, sitting there with my bagel and a cup of coffee, and I spent like 3 hours there, and I built the track, and then went home and did a vocal, in 20 minutes, and mixed it and sent it off. And the guy said to me, "Oh, what was your budget? And I said, well, to be honest, my budget was about $4. It was a bagel and a cup of coffee. That was the budget. So if you want to pay me back for the bagel and coffee, be my guest."
Well, the Dream Syndicate was very active in the early 80s, late 80s. Well, late 80s, you disbanded for a while. And you started releasing solo albums in the 90s, I guess?
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Right. Yeah, we broke up in 88. And, first solo album was 90, so kind of right away. took a year off, then dove into that.
That was a Kerosene Man, the first solo?
Yeah, it was. And, when the band broke up at the very end of 88, almost 89, really, we broke up just as the new year was starting. And I still wanted to, I was 28 and I was kind of a little freaked out thinking, well, I might be done. I mean, God, what happens if I've been having, a relatively good time doing this rock and roll thing, and in the years from 22 to 28, which the years I cover mostly in the book, though in the 80s, we had incredible adventures. The things I look back now is like, holy cow, we touring in tour buses opening for U2 and R.E.M. across the country and all across Europe and playing, playing countries where bands haven't been, and first band, American band to play Greece, in almost a decade. But I think crazy thing, just all that I could just start cataloging, and I do largely in the book. But at 28, I thought, oh my God, is that over? I knew somehow I didn't want to do the Dream Syndicate anymore, but I didn't know what would lie ahead. And I spent the year 89 being somewhat depressed because I thought, well, I don't know. What do I do? I just started writing a lot of songs and playing with a lot of different musicians, as one should when they break up a band. And I it's just like a marriage. Like I got divorced and I started seeing other people and played the field. It's a very, very analogous thing. The same kind of depression of, oh my God, did I just ruin the best thing I ever had just to go out there and slut around a bit, And it was like that. But then once I had the songs and once I had played with a few people, I started to kind of see what I wanted to do, and then made Kerosene Man and Dazzling Display, two very different records from what I'd done in the 80s, and they were received really well. So that kind of gave me the confidence to feel like, okay, right, I do maybe have, I wouldn't say a career, but maybe I can keep doing this for a while. And that was a great turning point.
Well, Kerosene Man featured Johnette Napolitano and DJ Bonebreak. Both of them have worked with Sid Straw, who was on the show recently. And I mentioned...
Oh, right, that's right. Yes, exactly. Sid and I play with a lot of people in common, yeah.
Yeah, we should send some love to Sid. She just lost her precious dog, Massimo, this past week. Poor thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know that.
I know that was
that's
pretty heartbreaking. Well, Dazzling Display featured Peter Buck, who, of course, is with the Baseball Project. Was that the first time you recorded with Peter?
Recorded, yes. We'd already been friends for a long time. Peter and I became friends while I was making Medicine Show in 83, and just immediately kindred spirits, where we get along really well. We like a lot of the same things, and we can just hang out together easily. So we hit it off. And then in 84, the Dream Syndicate opened for R.E.M. on an 8-week tour. So we spent a lot of time together.
Right.
And so we had a really strong friendship. But we'd never actually, he jumped up on stage at my shows at various times and things like that. But we'd never actually worked together until Dazzling Display. And he and I wrote the title track for that album. And I can't remember how it came up. Maybe he might have been suggested. Now, bear in mind, at this point in 92 or 91 when I made that record, R.E.M's on top of the world. They're, they're at their commercial peak at that moment. They were really, they had just put out, I guess, Out of Time, I think Out of Time had come out, so Losing My Religion and all that's out there. They're doing very well. And I think Peter's always been very good about sharing the wealth, in that he will, they always brought bands they like to open their tours, and he's always played on other people's records. And he's very helpful. And I think he saw at that point he could help me out by playing on my record and giving me that little bit of cachet or whatever, a little R.E.M. love. And it was great. So but he actually played wonderfully on that. He has a great skill, many great skills, but one skill he has is he's able to look at a musical situation, a band, a recording session, and figure out the element that's going to make it better. He's not looking to say, I'm going to Peter Buck all over this thing. He will just find the element that's needed. And he has a good sense of that. That's why he's a good record producer, too.
By the way, it's Peter's birthday today, so happy birthday to Peter Buck.
I know that. happy birthday to Peter. He's down in Brazil. He's been playing a band in Brazil for the last 4 or 5 months. Yeah,
he gets around.
Out there studying Portuguese. That's for sure.
going back through your discography, I was reminded of a song title that I absolutely love. I'm a big Coen Brothers fan, and especially of Miller's Crossing. I think Miller's Crossing is far and away their best film. But you have a song called Take Your Flunky and Dangle. And I recognize that line immediately from when Leo delivers the line to Johnny Casper. I think the whole thing, you ain't
nice going. You're one of the few who've caught that. I appreciate that. That's great. It's actually the album title, not a song title.
Right. I think he says, you ain't got a license to kill bookies, and today I ain't selling. So take your flunky and dangle. I've probably watched. I don't even know how many times I've seen that film. I couldn't even tell you.
Look in your heart.
Oh yeah, Bernie Birnbaum. So at what point did you move from L.A. to New York?
I moved to New York in 1994. So got 30 years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, I always wanted to live here. I'd just been, from the first time I came here when I was 21, I just fell in love with the city and always felt very at home here, and really dreamed and almost succeeded a few times, but over the years moving here, but something would come up here and there. And finally had the opportunity in a legal sublet on the Upper West Side, as one does here. And so moved in with some good cheap rent and nice area, and just figured, I'll do it for a few years and get my New York jollies out of the way and see if, how long that sticks. Here I am. The biggest thing I've done is I moved from Manhattan to Queens. That's been my only migration since then.
Okay. Well, Sweetness and Light was your first album to feature Linda Pittman, I believe.
That's right. The first time with Linda. Yeah. We actually met on the Dazzling Display tour. Her band, Zuzu's Pedals, opened for my band at Maxwell's in Hoboken, the famous Maxwell's. And we hit it off. We, got along well. I liked her band, and she was really nice. But difference in times, pre-email, pre-Facebook, et cetera, we kind of lost touch for 3 years, and then got back in touch after I moved to New York around 95. And she moved here that year, and we sort of became a couple and started touring together right around the same time in 96. And, it was exciting. It was exciting to be on the road with somebody who I was in love with and dating, and having these adventures together. I remember I played in Gutterball, and very, very much missed Brian Harvey, who was such a wonderful person. But Brian and I were bandmates, and I remember walking with Brian one night in Rome on a great Gutterball tour. This was maybe 94, something like that. And it was a gorgeous full moon, and we just had an amazing pasta dinner and red wine. He and I were walking back to the hotel, and just arm in arm as buddies will do, and he said, "Man, Steve, I sure do love you, but I'd rather be here with my wife right now." It's like, and it was a good point. You usually when you're on tour, you have all these great experiences, but often not with, your wife or girlfriend.
Right.
And I have had a lot of chances to travel, and I still do with the baseball project, and experience these things with Linda, which is nice.
Very nice. The 2000 album, Here Come the Miracles, was voted Best Rock Alternative Album in 2002 at the American Association of Independent Music Awards. That was the first of 3 records to become known as the Desert Trilogy.
Right.
Well, I got to see you perform a live version of Amphetamine recently at Euclid Records.
Oh yeah, the stripped down.
Yeah,
that's right. Just it works surprisingly well that way. Yeah, that was I've had a lot of times in my life where luckily where I've gone into a studio or on stage. Well, it happens more often on stage, but going into a studio and just things clicking in a really nice way. And that period there, we're saying the Desert Trilogy, which are 3 records I made in Tucson between 2000 and 2005 with Linda and Jason Victor and Dave DeCastro and Chris Kakovas as well. We made these 3 records around that time that just were just great experiences. Just everything you want in a recording session, where things happen that surprise you and things click in great ways, and you take things as far as they can go and all that. And it was fantastic. And yeah, Amphetamine came from that session. It's great when that happens. When it happens, it's everything you want when you play music. It just, I can't believe I'm here with other people, 3, 4, 5 other people, and we're just clicking in this way that just, it's effortless and beautiful. Now, the flip side of sessions you have where that doesn't happen, where just everything's like pulling teeth, and that can be exciting too, because you use whatever skills and wiles you have to get over the hump and figure it out. But it's much more fun when that just happens naturally.
Well, I'll have to send you, and hope you're okay with it. I think you will be. But that morning you played at Euclid, I'm not one to, I'm not one to like stand there with my phone through the duration of a song. However, there have been a couple times where that morning I propped my phone up on a stack of albums kind of discreetly, and I have a recording. I have a recording of you playing Amphetamine, so I'll have to send that your way.
Oh, great. Slip a little into the show. Into the
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, that was exciting. That was yeah. Feel free. I don't mind. That was fun. I just played the Collinsville Theater the night before, and it wasn't super late night, but evening gig, and I sort of had to drag myself out of bed in the morning to get over there to Euclid. But I'm happy to do it for Steve and for a great store, and I got to see Steve Pick, who's an old friend too, so that was a lot of fun. But they told me there would be donuts and coffee there, so I figured, well,
that's right.
I can drag myself in the door, and it was fun because I got to play Amphetamine, which I'm on this tour I'm doing right now. It's largely book related, so the show really covers music that ends in 1988, just like the book does. So I'm playing maybe 100 shows in this tour where I won't get to play things like Amphetamine or songs by the current lineup of the Dream Syndicate or all these kinds of things. So I'm playing a show tomorrow night in Rhode Island, and the promoter said, "Oh, excited to hear you. Are you going to play some Baseball Project songs?" I said, "Well, I hate to break it to you, but this is a very fixed show. I'm up there doing my Lenny Bruce, Hal Holbrook, Spalding Gray, whatever you want to call it, kind of thing. And it's going to have it's a show. So sit back and grab your popcorn and settle in for a beginning, middle, and end."
A Steve Wynn tribute album was released in 2004, From a Man of Mysteries, a Steve Wynn tribute, and that featured your songs performed by Concrete Blonde, The Silos, Chuck Prophet, The Minus Five, Russ Tolman of True West, and others.
Yeah, that was I'll tell you something. I mean, that was a surprise. I didn't know that was happening. It was kind of a friend and a fan and kind of an archivist named Jaap Boos, who's a Dutch gentleman. He lives in Northern Holland, and he noted that year that came out was what he called my 25th anniversary in showbiz, I guess, which he marked back to the beginning, to the first Suspects record, which is a funny marker for me because, like, oh, geez, yeah, I guess that would be a way to mark the beginning. But he noted that, and he used that as an excuse to round up pretty much all friends of mine, people who I knew from them, either close friends or just knew from the music world, and reached out to all of them to do a cover of one of my songs. And I had no idea. And Jaap was in New York in 2006, and I think it's the year the record came out. And he said to me, "Hey, I'm trying to think I'm trying to remember the circumstances, but I think he said, I'm going to be going to see this band at the Lakeside Lounge, this club, which was run by your guest on your two-parter, Eric Amble.
Eric Amble, yeah.
Yeah, his wonderful, sadly lamented, missed bar was the greatest place in East Village. And I think just somehow I was told I should go there to see some band. I don't know, but it ended up being like a surprise party for me, and it was all these people who played all my songs, and they presented me with the record. There's a tribute record made for you. Like, oh my God! I'll tell you, I was having fun at the party and having a blast and having drinks and talking to friends, but I couldn't wait to get home and hear the record. And I did. I got home at 4 a.m. and said, "Okay, let's put it on." I spent the next 2 hours till the sun came up listening to all the versions. It was so touching. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, and so there's always a lot of thrills. You maybe in doing this, you have all kinds of highlights. Like, the time I played that show to that many people, or played on stage with that person, or went to this place and did this. But I have to say, over all the years, one thing that remains one of the biggest thrills is when somebody covers one of my songs. That's such a loving thing to do. It's very touching. It's very, very flattering. It's also fun to see how people interpret your song. And, on that record, there's a few versions of my songs that are just really reworked in a great way, so many. So that's great. I wish it was something people could hear because it was done as a labor of love, and everyone did their stuff for free and just, out of love of their heart. It never came out per se properly. I wish it was available. Maybe someday somebody can do that. I don't think anybody on the record would really mind, but there might be a few problems here and there. But it's great.
Well, around 2007, you formed the Baseball Project. That's you, Linda Pittman, Mike Mills, Peter Buck, and Scott McCoy. And by the way, every time I've seen you, Peter was busy with something. So when I saw you, it was just the lineup without Peter. But also,
too bad.
I'd love to hear your account of how the band came to be. And all I know is, I think I'm getting this sort of right, is that it maybe came out of a discussion during R.E.M's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Is that in the ballpark of how it came to be?
It's in the ballpark. Okay. It's right there in the ballpark, to use proper metaphor. And yeah, that was it was 2000. Let me get this right. 2007, I guess. Yeah, and R.E.M got inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here in New York City. Great, boy, they threw a great party. It was one of the top restaurants in the city, a place called Del Posto. It's gone now. Great Italian thing. And they invited 100 friends and family and business people from all different eras of their life. Of course, foot the bill for a wonderful evening. And Linda and I went to that because we were friends, particularly Peter at the time. I knew Mike and Michael and Bill and all the various side people a little bit, but Peter was my main friend in the band. Peter invited me and Linda. And the weird thing was, now Scott McCoy and I came up in the same era and with a lot of the same friends. Young Fresh Fellows and Dream Syndicate were touring, the same circuit at the same time. And I knew their music and liked them. I think he was into my stuff. We never really met. I think one time, the story I tell, and I'm sticking to it. I think the one time we ever met was in a men's room in a Seattle club one night at the urinals. I'm not kidding. But we really, despite knowing a lot of people coming, had never really hung out or met. And that night, at the end of the night, as things were winding down and as the bar stayed open, Scott and I were standing there at the bar and started talking and, got along right away and, did the usual, musician talk. Where are you touring? How's the recording going at this and that? And we started talking baseball and we both realized that, we were each other were huge baseball fans. So off we are talking about how his teams are doing, my team's doing, and blah, blah, blah. And then he said something, or one of us said, I've always wanted to do a record about baseball. And it turns out we both had that same idea. And I will preface that by saying, if you're a musician, you always get crazy ideas that you never do. You can have a million ideas. Like someday I'm going to the moon with Paul McCartney, and we're going to record an interstellar record. But I'll get around to that someday. You have crazy ideas. But this was something we both thought about. And once we had that discussion, I think the next morning, I know Linda said to me, you guys should really make that record because stop talking about it, just do it. And we just got to it. Scott and I started trading songs back and forth by email for the next month. And I'd write 3 in a day and he'd write 3 in a day. And we just kind of cranking them out. And before we knew it, we went to the studio just a month or two later to get them all recorded. And, obviously Linda, who's a huge baseball fan too, obviously she'd be the drummer. And at that point, Peter, who's not a big sports fan, he's grown to kind of become a little more in the time I've known him, but he did everything with Scott and vice versa at the time. So he was brought aboard and we made that record. Now we honestly figured, well, you know what, we'll do this because it's fun and maybe we can self-press 500 vinyl copies and, just sell them and say it's a record. But Scott's label then and now, Yep Rock, heard it and said, no, we want to do this. And once again, like I was talking about how fast things happen for the Dream Syndicate. With this band, it makes more sense because, we had 1 or 2 guys from R.E.M, depending on, I say Scott's an R.E.M member, but because we had Peter in the band, all that kind of stuff. But within, we recorded the record and came out, and our very first show was on the David Letterman show. And we started right with the big TV thing and then took it from there. And the thing is, I don't know what I thought the band would have. I don't know if I thought just, made our record, we went on Letterman, we'll do some shows and have some laughs. But I don't know if I would have thought we were going to be still doing it. What is it now? 17 years later. But we are. Yeah. I think I think obviously people like the band a lot and we do well on the road and we've made 4 records now. But I think I would be pretty accurate in saying the main motivation for the band is we all like each other so much. And Mike joined the band, as you said. He became Peter's sub at a certain point. Peter couldn't do every tour. He had other projects going. He had a bad back for a while. So for various reasons, he would need a sub now and then. And Mike Mike Mills is a big baseball fan.
Yeah.
And of course, great bass player, singer, said, I'd love to play with you guys. So it became the either or. It was Peter or Mike for a while. And at a certain point we made a record together called Third with all five of us and toured a little bit. But right at this point for the last 2 or 3 years, I'd say almost always you'll have all five people playing because that's the band now. And it's a great band. And we just have a great time. We just have so much fun. There is just, we all have a lot in common. We've all been through the same wars. We all like doing the same thing. It's just, it's a chance to go out and see your friends and travel around.
That's so great. I have a baseball autographed by Mike Mills that I got when you guys played the Woodhouse, Rick Wood's place years ago. Yeah. Actually, I have all.
Did he sign at HOF 07?
He did. It's right here. It's up on the shelf here.
That's his thing. He gets to do that.
Yeah.
He's Hall of Fame.
Well, I think I mentioned to you at the record store, Rick asked me to design the pennant, the little Baseball Project pennant, and I had all you guys sign that too. So that's hanging up on the wall right here too. So pretty cool.
Great. Well, Rick always designed the best stuff. His shows are fantastic.
Oh yeah.
He's doing it again, right? Is Rick back to doing shows again?
Yeah, well, he does an annual thing. He just said the third annual. I love the name. It's Woods Dock down on the dock at his. He has another home down in a weekend.
Woods Dock.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Woods Dock.
He and Nancy have a home, like a weekend home. I think they're spending quite a bit of time splitting time between here and their home down in the Ozarks. But yeah, he's had great lineups of bands like in the fall the last 3 years, and he's going to continue doing that. I think once in a while. I don't know if he's doing any more shows at the house. I did see the Waco Brothers a couple of years ago at their house. But yeah, the days of the Woodhouse concerts was just an amazing era.
They ought to have a Hall of Fame for house concert hosts, and he'd be in the House Concert Host Hall of Fame for sure.
I think so. He gets mentioned on this show a lot because he deserves it. I also have a copy of the single. It's El Hombre backed with Harvey Haddix. I'm a big St. Louis Cardinals fan, of course, being here in St. Louis. And I've read quite a bit about that whole Harvey Haddix almost no-hitter, I guess, or almost perfect game, and that was really a fun record. Yeah, I've got a copy of that.
You guys should have held on to Pujols.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so sad that Pujols didn't stay with the Cardinals. Didn't work out for anybody.
And I swear I'm not getting paid to mention Euclid Records every 10 minutes, but that was on the Euclid Records label. So anyway, what can I say? I got a bunch of friends.
Look, it's a great story.
Yeah. Well, for any listeners who aren't aware of it, I know Steve mentioned earlier, he has a new book out and also a new album. The book is I Wouldn't Say It If It Wasn't True, and the album is Make It Right. Were you working on the book and the record simultaneously? I guess at some point you must have been some crossover there.
Yes. The book I wrote mostly between 2020 and last year, but I actually had started a little before that. Certain parts of it was started even before that. And the record kind of was over the same period as well. I just was writing, as I do, writing songs and recording songs in different places with different people during the years I was writing the book. And, like most musicians, I guess I shouldn't say like all whatever, but there's always things I'm working on with people and trying out things that don't come out, that sort of I do just because it's fun. And you record it and say, well, that's great. Someday that'll turn into something. And then often it does. But during the time I was writing the book, I was focusing, as far as music, mostly on the Dream Syndicate and the Baseball Project, because those two things have been so active. But I was still recording solo stuff. When it came time for the book to come out, which I knew was going to be coming out September of this year, last September, I knew I'd be touring a lot behind the book. And I thought, well, it might be nice to have some new music to tie into the tour. The merch booth, or just to keep new music out there. I hadn't done a solo record per se in a long time. So I thought, well, all these different things I'm working on would make a nice record. And I put them together. And once again, it seems to be comes up often when I talk about these kinds of things, but I thought it'd be just like a little self-pressed thing for fun. And my very wonderful record label, Fire Records, said, no, we'd actually like to put this record out ourselves. And they've been great, and they got behind it, and a fully fledged album. And it does, I think because I was working on it and recording the songs and writing the songs during the time I was writing a book about my life, a book detailing and thinking about things I'd done, it kind of makes sense. The record's very personal and autobiographical. And the record really fits well with the book. It covers a lot of the same themes that are in the book. So it makes sense. I really do want to do more solo records. I haven't done them in a proper solo record in so long. So I think at some point soon, I'd like to kind of go in and see where that goes. But for now, this is the one.
I'm looking forward to that and to reading the book. I have not read it yet, I confess, but I'm planning to, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it. And the book goes through 1988, and the publishing company, Jawbone Press, has already asked for the follow-up. So got to get going on that because I want to get, but it's really fun having a book out. It's my first book. And I have a very good friend, Pat Thomas, who he's written many wonderful books, and also as leader of the band Mushroom, and does a lot of all kinds of work in music, and just kind of a renaissance man of criticism and performing and writing and everything. And he told me early on, look, records, and this is sad but true, records have a short shelf life. Records, you make a record and within 2 or 3 months, it's kind of run its course. People still hear it and like it, but it won't be the new thing anymore. But books, as he told me, last for years. They're sort of, people discover them over a long period of time, and I'm finding that right now. So it's been really fun being out there promoting a book, knowing that I'm just getting started. It's 3 months old, but people are just slowly finding out about it. So I'll be out there on the road touring behind the book at least till next summer.
Fantastic. Steve Wynn, you're an incredibly prolific and busy man. I want to thank you so much for taking some time out to do this today.
My pleasure. Great talking to you. Have a great weekend.
All right.
Nice talking to you.
Did you hear the one about the prodigal son? He found himself alone, far from everyone, carefully serving up a tattered pedigree, as if to say there was a time when that was me. First flush of a mutual attraction, when you're young, that spark quickly turns to action. Came together like a pact, built to last so long ago. Flickering in the past then, driving down on the PCH, headphones on and I'm feeling great. Radio tells the story as we go. Soundtrack from another time, faded words and busted rhymes, the things we left behind in Santa Monica. The mission and the missive turns to other things, caustic words and jest, and sad eternal stings.
Thanks for tuning in to Frets with DJ Fey. If you like the show, you can subscribe for free at most podcast platforms. Hope you'll join me again next time. Stay tuned.